welcome to Travel+Mystery, and I am your host, Justin Adair. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. The mic is not working. We have to get a new one. It was a cheap mic. The system says it is using too much power, so the audio might sound a little wonky, but you know what? We do what we can with what we got. I am the rhythm. This is my dance floor. Grab your popcorn and get comfortable. In this episode, I'm not going to convince you that ghosts exist. Rather, I am going to tell you why I believe in them. I have been ghosted by a lot of men on Grindr, but these stories will be my experiences with the paranormal. First, let's chat. I don't know about you, but music seems boring this decade. I'd rather listen to 80s rock, 90s R&B, 2000s pop music. A lot of people say they love all kinds of music, but I really mean it when I say that. Anything from Dusty Springfield to Creed. I really do enjoy all genres, but there's something missing in music this decade. Some argue that we have too much music. Some would say it lacks groove. Maybe it's just me. They say you listen to music that you listened to when you were younger because that's when you first felt it. All the teenage hormones and emotions made the music hit different. Speaking of hitting different and appreciating the classics, I started watching movies I've never seen before. Movies like Still Magnolias, Fried Green Tomatoes, and Splash. Okay, I did see Splash when I was younger, and rewatching, I remember most of the scenes. It did give me a sense of nostalgia, that nostalgia feeling all millennials love to feel. However, Madison was all up on Tom Hanks, and I'm like, damn, being a mermaid makes you more horny and adventurous than Jeffrey Epstein. I get it. That was her true love, her soulmate. So much so, spoiler alert, he became a human mermaid. Still Magnolias and Fried Green Tomatoes were great films and had beautiful messages. Still Magnolias had a sad ending, but a great message about family, friends, and community. I enjoyed watching because I missed what the holidays felt like when I was a kid. You just had to be there. But it was a magical spectacle. The movie was also filmed in Louisiana. Roger and I have traveled through Louisiana many times, and I would love to explore the different cities. I just get that swamp magic feeling from the state. And I am from the Midwest, but I am a tropical fruit at heart. I really enjoy being in warmer climates. The stories like in New Orleans of vampires and voodoo, the eerie feeling of the brick roads and history have always intrigued me. Have you ever been to a museum or historical land and felt that history? Almost like you're time traveling back. It's hard to explain to most, but I've always felt connected to older buildings and history itself. In today's episode, we are going to have a ghost story campfire vibe. Any 90 kids remember watching Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tia and Tamara episode always sticks out to me. Anyways, these ghost stories are mine. They are part of the reason why I love mystery and the unseen. And whether you believe in ghosts or not, we're all fascinated by the idea that something from the past can still leave a mark on the present. Please make sure to subscribe to the family and like the video to let me know you enjoy this content and maybe I can get a better microphone. So let's get into it. The Antiquity Inn, a country inn in Logansport, Indiana, is a 23-acre luxury bed and breakfast established in 1992. The year I was born. The property dates back to 1849 when Levi Brown started a horse and dairy farm on land granted by President Millard Fillmore. the historic grounds originally featured a toll house for the old Michigan Road. The property remained in the same family for generations. In the 1980s, the owners saw a way to preserve the land and decided to transform the large dairy barn into a country inn. They scored auctions and sales to gather antique furnishing and architectural fixtures. And Twickety eventually opened as a 12-room boutique bed and breakfast. Though the original structure was impacted by a fire, the owners rebuilt and expanded the inn, combining its classic historic charm with modern amenities, whirlpool suites, gardens, and private fishing ponds. On October 1st, 2014, a massive electrical fire broke out around 9:30 a.m. on the second floor of the main building. The original structure was an 1888 dairy barn built heavily with antique walnut wood. The fire burned hot and fast, resulting in a loss of the 12-bedroom building. Thankfully, no guest or staff were injured. The fire completely destroyed the structure along with countless irreplaceable Logansport artifacts, 100-year-old antiques, and historical artwork. The owners spent 4 years acquiring new antiques and rebuilding the property from the ground up. Officially reporting the new downsized 6-bedroom boutique in early 2019. I was fortunate enough to hang out at the inn in its original structure as a kid. My mother was friends with the owner's daughter and worked at the inn. The inside of the building felt like an old castle. Every time I was there, I felt like I was transported back in time. I would play by using my imagination and pretending it was my castle. The inn isn't known as a publicly active haunted hotel, but you can sense the history of the place. When I was younger, I wasn't as open to the idea of ghosts, but I always seemed to pick up on it in my own way. Being a child and using your imagination or having an imaginary friend, where do you think that comes from? I would play out scenarios and make up specific names while at the inn. I can't help but wonder where those names come from. But they were there. There was a guest while I was staying at the inn, and she happened to be very intuitive. She used the bathroom and saw a man. She came out and explained what she saw. My mother's friend took her into the office, pointed at a picture of Levi Brown, and asked, "Is that him?" The guest responded, "Yes." I never saw anything while I was at the inn, but I definitely felt like someone was watching, especially when I would walk up the stairs at night by myself to go to my room. There's also a beautiful house next to the inn where my mother's friend lived. And I would also stay the night there. And one night I woke up and there was a piece of glass on the floor. That night I happened to be sleeping on an air mattress. How that glass got there, I have no explanation. Overall, the inn was a happy place and very historical. And I also remember there was a hot tub and a metal structure shaped like a silo. I was an only child, and back then I was bummed that I had to be by myself. Now I appreciate that I got to experience the inn, and it was my introduction to ghosts, empathetic feelings, and unexplainable events. When I was about 13, we moved to my stepdad's childhood home. We were originally living 3 houses down, and when his parents divorced and went their separate ways, we moved in. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house with a furnished basement. It also had a really decent backyard and a step-up living room. The house needed work, but ultimately it was livable. The first night I stayed at the house, because I also was living with my great aunt and uncle who had full custody of me, I fell asleep in the living room, and my mother claims she saw me walking past the bedroom. into the kitchen. They went to check where I was, and I was fast asleep in the living room. She saw something, but it wasn't me. Now, like I said, I was an only kid living in the house. But by the time I was a sophomore, my cousin, who was a couple years older than me, lived with us. Her senior year. We got along well, and I was happy that she got to make her last year of high school feel special and that I had someone to hang out with. The ghost who lived in the basement was talked about frequently, and my family had a lot of that stuff from me. I think it was their own perceptions and beliefs on maybe how I would react. The story goes that there was a fire and a little girl didn't make it out. The house was rebuilt, and there's always a fire, it seems. But anyways, I didn't have much details on when the fire took place, but all I know is that there was a little girl spirit running around, and she liked the basement for whatever reason. My cousin's bedroom was on the furnished side of the basement. There was another side that held storage and holiday decorations. And one evening, my mother had her witchy friend, and a couple of other girlfriends over. And I had just gotten back from wherever my cousin and I were. And they told us that the little girl wasn't going to bother us. In hindsight, it looked like they were doing a ritual. And they looked stunned and like they just used a lot of energy. I felt a presence, but it was never evil. My mother's friends told us she enjoyed having kids back in the house, the little girl. And my family was never religious or spiritual. My mother, however, has the gift of sight. I know because it has been in our family for years and passed down each generation. It's something we never talked about or discussed because of our dynamic, but it's also something she never fully embraced because of her beliefs. I want to clarify that I've never seen a ghost, and in my opinion, everyone has the ability to tune into these types of things. But I was living in the house where everyone around me was believing in seeing ghosts, and that changes the way you see things. By my senior year, a friend of mine had mentioned a guy who was in his early 20s, and she thought that we would get along. Our first date was going out to Okefenokee. It was the first time I've ever been there, and I have a video of Okie and its history. Go make sure to check that out. But Okie is an old Indian burial ground, or known to be. When you get there, when I say there, I mean the middle of nowhere, Indiana. You arrive at a driveway, gravel, and then a bunch of trees start to hang over you as you go down the road. And it's a windy gravel path. And then you lead into a circle that is used as a parking lot. Our first date, we're gonna call him Alex. He was saying that he saw shadows, and at the time, he was cute and trying to impress me. Or at least that's what I thought. Okie started to be our thing. The mutual friend that hooked us up would go along, and we would even venture out to other haunted places. At this time, my grandmother had just passed. She was my mom in a lot of ways, and we were all going to another haunted spot, a group of us, and it ended up being a bus, but on the way there, I was feeling grief, and I told a story about how my mom and stepdad and I went to a wedding out of town, and my grandmother had wrote the directions. In context, this is before Google Maps, iMaps, and advanced technology. But in the directions, my grandma wrote, "Look for the ice cream." I explained how we laughed and said, "Is someone going to be holding ice cream out in the corner?" My friends and I continued our journey to a haunted bridge where we were going, and I was feeling like the synchronicities are on point because maybe a few miles or so later, while we were driving, a huge statue of an ice cream cone showed up. My friends were like, "We found the ice cream!" It was a magical moment. And I do have more stories to tell about my grandma and her passing that leads to my own sensitivity. But first, back to Oki. I don't remember how everyone started to want to go to Oki. I think my neighbors knew about the spot, but my family and I would go and explore the haunted woods. We went out there once during the day to walk in the woods. Once you get past the long driveway and the eerie trees, you end up in a circle, and past the circle are thick woods. And I would advise to walk those woods during the day because at night it's easy to get lost and they are really thick woods. Thick. And once we were done hiking, we went back to the circle and I noticed a handprint on my grandpa's car. It was a muddy handprint on his back window. He looked and then laughed like I had put the handprint there. I assure you, I did not. My mother and uncle and a couple of neighbors and I decided to go back to Oki at night. And there are multiple stories at Oki, but there is a girl named Stephanie. She was murdered out in the woods, and legend has it if you say her name 3 times, she will scream. Now, there was like a horse ranch or some kind of farm nearby across from the haunted area, but they say people will sometimes scream back to spook the ghost hunters or the people exploring. Regardless, I have always heard a scream. We were spooking ourselves out, exploring, and my mother said she saw a figure in the woods. At this point, the neighbors were ready to leave. And as we were leaving, my uncle decided to drive down the windy gravel road real slow. And it felt like someone was walking beside the car. We were all silent until we got back on the cement road. Alex and I started dating for a few months, and we both decided that we were better off friends. I was on the phone with him when we got the call my grandmother had passed. A few days after her passing, I had a dream that my mother, grandma, and her sisters were shopping at a Kmart. I was there, but it was like I was watching a family video. Everyone looked younger, and my mother was pregnant, and she only had me. So my grandma went down the baby toy aisle by herself, and I followed her in the dream, and she was smiling and playing with the toys. And it was like she was showing me how excited she was for my arrival. But by my senior year, my mother and I had one of many falling outs, and I decided to live with my aunt and uncle full time. I would split time with them and my mother, because they had full custody and adopted me when I was 2 years old. Alex and I remained friends, and we, even years after we broke up, and that was when I was introduced to his older friends. Adam was someone I met before. He was part of this friend group, and when I met him, I had a crush on him. He was punk rock and had different colored hair and alternative emo vibe. Our attraction for each other is another story and a huge mess. But anyways, the group all started hanging out individually and together. And I was getting to know Adam, and I noticed he was into darker things. He would be into watching movies like Insidious. And at the time, there was this craze in my hometown about smoking incense. Sounds insane, but specifically Mr. Smiley. It wasn't like on a stick, like it would be traditionally, but more like a potpourri. There are plenty of other incense to choose from, like Mad Hatter and etc. And Adam and the group was really into smoking it. So the friend that I was living with had this old sheet, and I decided to paint it. Adam came over and saw the abstract painting, and he stared at it like it was familiar. He used his hands and started analyzing shapes. It was a good 5 minutes of him being in awe of the painting. I don't know if he liked the painting and he thought it was creative, but I couldn't help but wonder if there was something else that he was seeing. Adam at this time started to be in his own world. Once at a party, he started to roll on the floor and running amok. Yeah, he was drunk, and if I remember correctly, he was a Leo. When I looked at him, something felt different. Maybe it was the environment. Maybe it was the things happening around us. Maybe it was my own perception. But in the moment, I felt like I was looking at someone I didn't recognize. It seemed in the group, everyone knew something I wasn't aware of. They would go to Oki by themselves, and when they came back and we would meet up, they would ask Adam if he was okay. The last time I went to Oki, it was a group of us, and Adam led us into the woods. We all stayed together, and as we were walking this path, the bugs got quiet. It got silent. And Adam, his voice had urgency, and he said, "Let's go back." We made it back to the circle, and we were all hanging out by the cars, chatting, and when we happened to look up, the moon was hidden by a cloud all of a sudden. The sky got dark, and it started raining. It was like something was telling us to leave. Soon after, I moved back to my aunt and uncle's house, started hanging out with a different crowd, moved, got my own place. I would see Alex and a few others from time to time, but I eventually just stopped hanging out with Alex and the group altogether. When I look back at these stories, I don't think the most important question is whether every single thing had a paranormal explanation. Maybe some things were ghosts. Maybe some things were coincidences. Maybe some things were just the way our minds try to understand moments that feel bigger than ourselves. But I do know this. Those experiences changed me. The old inn taught me that history has a feeling, that places can hold memories, even if we can't see them. The little girl in the basement taught me that sometimes the things we don't understand are the things that stay with us longest. Oki taught me that grief, love, and mystery can sometimes become connected in ways we can't explain. And the people I met along the way remind me that everyone carries their own story, their own darkness, and their own unexplained moments. Maybe that's why we are fascinated by ghosts. It's not just about seeing something from the other side. Maybe it's about realizing that the past never completely leaves us. And the people we loved, the places we visited, and the moments that changed us become a part of who we are. So whether you believe in ghosts or not, I think we all can agree on one thing. Every person leaves a mark. Every place has a story. And sometimes the things we can't explain are the things we remember the most. Thank you for sitting around the campfire with me. This is only one chapter of my journey, and there are so many other stories and chapters I haven't told yet. More moments that shape how I see the world. And if you want to hear those stories, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this episode of Travel+Mystery. I appreciate you being here. Please make sure to like, subscribe, do what you can, because we do what we can with what we got. All right. I'll see you next time.